The fate of the Vaal League has died out for the most part, and I've been a little bored recently, so I decided, why not make an Acolyte of Chayula meme build just to see how trash it is.
I may not have a brain, gentlemen, but I have an idea.
Well, it's been a few weeks now of playing with the build, and surprisingly enough, it's oddly super fun and satisfying. Now, I will preface that this is not the strongest build in the game, but it can clear all content. For this build, it was really important to me to make sure the build worked without Headhunter or super strong items like lineage gems such as Rakiata's Flow, as they can really make any build shine, especially Headhunter. And I think I have finally tweaked the build to the point where I'm satisfied and happy to be sharing it with you guys today. There's a few synergies that we're going to go over today that will work on other builds as well as any Chayula specific build, so I'm sure you'll learn something or be able to extract those and use them for your own. With Acolyte of Chayula, currently the biggest issue is darkness, and that it has too much of a downside in giving up spirit with not enough upside to even be worth running. However, Into the Breach got buffed in the 0.4 patch, and with this build we are completely building into the remnants aspect. The notables Arcane Remnants, Remnant Attractions, along with Empowering Remnants give us an absolute insane amount of sustain, since we are constantly picking up Into the Breach Flames as well as tons of different remnants. This makes it to where anytime we pick up a remnant, we recover mana as well as increase the effects of the remnants that we picked up. Combine Arcane Remnants with the Spirit skill Mana Remnants, making our mana overflow above maximum, which gives us a constant generation of mana. We then take it one step further and grab the Keystone's Eldritch Battery and Mind Over Matter, and the result becomes one soul remnant sucking tanky beast that casts a purple LMG that deletes your enemies. From this synergy alone, we don't even need different types of Chayula flames other than purple, and you'll always be at nearly 10 stacks of purple flames while mapping, which equate to over 100% as extra damage as chaos damage. And if you haven't noticed already, we're doing chaos damage from Ember Fusillade. Ember Fusillade is our main damage skill, and although it's a fire skill, we are using the Black Flame Covenant Keystone, making all fire damage be converted to chaos damage. This keystone is great for us since we're already doing so much extra chaos damage, and it just lets us scale that damage even further. Also, monsters have a lower chaos resistance than they do for elemental resistances, so we don't need things like Rakiata's Flow to do a lot of damage. This is also important to note, as increased fire damage on gear and passives will not scale our damage any further, only increased chaos and spell damage will. So, as I've already stated, our main skill is Ember Fusillade, and it has a duration of time after being cast until it will fire its projectiles. You can keep casting it to stack more projectiles, and the more that fire at once, the more damage they will do. Therefore, we are stacking as much reduced skill effect duration as possible to limit that time that we have to wait for the projectiles to shoot off. The delay timer for the projectiles will reset every time you cast an Ember Fusillade. This is where the skill Unleash comes in handy. The skill is obtainable from using a Roaring Staff and can help cast more projectiles, with one to cast allowing you to keep a steady and constant flow of projectiles to mow your enemies down. There's a little more than just that. Ember Fusillade can be buffed by infusions. We are constantly getting lightning infusions from cast on crit with Living Bomb, along with the Spirit Gem Siphon Elements. We also grab the Keystone Elemental Equilibrium, turning the fire infusions from Living Bomb into lightning. This helps with shocking enemies, making us do more damage, as well as chaining to other enemies for better AoE clear. The only unique you need for this build is the Covenant Altar Robe for the modifier Spell Damage Leeched as Life. We have all this mana sustain, but we're just using it as a layer of defense since we're using the support gem Life Tap, making our skills cost life instead of mana. The Spell Damage Leeched as Life modifier alone can sustain our life since we have a solid source of leeches instant, which I will go over later. Before I give you a rundown of everything else for the build, let's get into some pros and cons. Some pros are the build has a good survivability, great single target damage, and it's more of a meme than meta, which is fun. Some cons are it does require a good staff, and gear can be quite sparse, so you'll probably have to craft some of these items, but they are fairly cheap to do except for the staff. Another downside is this is an end game build, and I don't really advise of it until at least level 80, but shines with the more passives you have. The build can be a little complex, especially for a beginner, as there's a lot of simple interactions and synergies going on, but the combination of them can be quite confusing. I'm sure you could also get this to work at a lower level, and I plan to test it with the next league, but I just haven't gotten to it currently. The last con that I have for this build is that that it is an Acolyte of Chayula build, and that is the worst ascendancy in the game. This build will also be great on Blood Mage without putting much more damage, but you will definitely sacrifice some survivability if you do this on Blood Mage. So I do want to stress that I made this build to showcase that any character can be viable and enjoyable, so play whatever you want because I'm having a blast on this character. Before I get into the fine details of the build, if you enjoy this sort of breakdown and content, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next video. Let's start with gear. For uniques, I have the Covenant Altar Robe, and this is the only required unique. You can use Headhunter here, but it's not a necessity. Headhunter will increase your mapping speed and overall power. Another great option is the Midnight Braid unique, as it can give us that extra damage recouped as mana, and since mana is our survivability, this is nice. The only other unique, and this is still completely optional, is Exile Acuity. This will make the life leech from the Covenant Altar Robe keep you at max life or above all the time when you are doing damage. It's optional because you can get a Heart of the Well Diamond with Leech's Instant along with anointing the Voracious Notable on your amulet for more Leech's Instant, and you will have the same result. You can then pick up some really good rare gloves. However, I only recommend that if you can afford really high-end rare gloves. For helmets and boots, you want as much energy shield as possible, as this gives us more mana since we're running Eldritch Battery. Picking up movement speed is important here. Critical hit or damage bonus is also great, but energy shield is the priority. For rings, wanted prefixes are increased chaos damage, flat maximum mana, and increased maximum mana percentage. The desecrated modifier increased effect of remnants is amazing and is super easy to put on rings as well because you can easily target it when desecrating. For suffixes, grab resist as you need them, and if you're someone who likes rarity, you can definitely fit it on here if you have the space. The main modifiers you want on the staff are increased spell damage or chaos damage, and then plus fire spell skills or all spell skills. The firing as additional projectiles is the next best, as Ember Fusillade deals more damage the more projectiles it fires, and this is very easy to target. You'll also want a roaring staff for the unleash skill. For the amulet, grab as much spirit as you can possibly get, but you want the +3 to spell skills. For an anoint, you can grab anything that saves you passive points if you're running Exile Acuity. If not, go Voracious. I've tested both and they're both viable. I think rare gloves will net you a little bit more damage if they are amazing, but Exile Acuity is just so easily accessible, and that is typically what I like to run. I have Wither Away anointed just to save me some extra passive points, and that's the main reason why Wither Away is anointed. For flasks, I'm using Laviandra's Spirits for that additional mana recovery, and then for the life flask, I'm using an instant recovery life flask. This can be great if you're just spamming it to gain health back when you're trying to cast those Ember Fusillades before a boss comes up. For the Ascendancy, obviously we're going Acolyte of Chayula. The first thing you want to take is Waking Dream for Into the Breach, and then afterwards you want to take Choice of Power to make sure all of our flames are purple. Afterwards, I take Chayula's Gift for the extra chaos resistance, and then I take Inner Turmoil for volatility. Volatility is an extra boost of damage, but it's honestly pretty trash in terms of uptimes, but you can try some of the different passives like 25% chance to refund volatility if you have extra passives or an anoint, but it's still mediocre to say the best, and I don't really recommend it, but there's really nothing else to put our passives into. I've already gone over a majority of the main notables, so I'll just hover through the rest along with some of the strong notables. We are using weapon set passives specifically for the Despair Curse. Our weapon set 2 buffs curses as much as possible, while weapon set 1 buffs our Ember Fusillade. Please note the different weapon set passives. Green is weapon set 2, red is weapon set 1. Despair is super strong here because we can put bosses into negative chaos resistances easily, drastically increasing our damage. For jewels, 1 modifier of recover mana on kill is nice, but not completely necessary. I like to grab a Time Lost Sapphire for this area here as well, as we can really benefit from it with all of the different passives in the surrounding area, but this build only wants Sapphires, and you want increased chaos damage, increased spell damage, critical hit, and critical damage bonus. Critical spell damage and hit chance for spells are all the same here, so you can grab whichever is cheaper. Additionally, a Prism of Beliefs Diamond is best in slot here if you can get the +3 levels to all Ember of Fusillade skills, but if you can't afford it, just use another Sapphire. And then finally, we have a Heart of the Well Diamond, as those are always great, and the best in slot is gain as extra chaos and lightning damage. And then if you aren't running the Exile Acuity unique, you'll definitely want to make sure it has the Leech's Instant. Now I'll do a quick rundown of skills and their support gems, but I'm only going to talk about the ones that I feel are important. For Unleash, you will only have this if you have a Roaring Staff. A Roaring Staff is best in slot for this build, as Unleash does buff Ember Fusillade, but if you can't afford one, just ignore the Unleash. Please note that Ember Fusillade is only on weapon set 1, and we are running Life Tap to make sure that all of it all costs life instead of mana. For cast on critical, you'll definitely want Life Tap as well for Living Bomb. If not, you will be running out of mana and constantly dying. For Frost Bomb, you can have it as low as possible. I only use this to get the remnants after, so I can buff up my Firestorm skill before bosses. For mana remnants, cannibalism is completely optional and only run it if you have enough spirit. I am only running Diala's Desire in order to lower the spirit cost. For Despair, please note that this is only for weapon set 2. Please note that Firestorm is only on weapon set 1, and I only use this skill when I'm fighting a boss and I'm pre-buffed, and I used Frost Bomb first to get those remnants to buff Firestorm just for a little bit of extra damage. Alright, I'll do a quick scroll through of my character screen, but there's really nothing to see here as this build really just shines in the actual map when I'm picking up those remnants. So I know you have seen some background footage at this point of the build, but I figured I'd show a tier 3 Zest from start just to show how it plays, and then I'll show some uber boss kills. For mapping and killing regular monsters, simply use Unleash and Fusillade together. There's a little bit of delay for the projectiles, but with practice you'll be able to keep up a steady flow, creating a fluid mapping experience as you can see. While mapping, you'll notice the amount of Fusillade projectiles on your tooltip bar. You can see here they're going up and down for when they're being cast off. My maximum is 14, and this scales with Ember Fusillade's level. So if you're unable to get something like a Prism of Belief Diamond, you may not be able to get 14 projectiles, but the projectile count on your tooltip bar is something to be aware of when mapping, just so you can know when to stop casting Ember Fusillade so the projectiles will shoot off. It's not the fastest build, but you could definitely pick up Headhunter to increase that mapping speed, as well as I definitely advise it if you're planning to run something like Juiced Overrun Abyssals, as those can be very difficult for any sort of build, and Headhunter really shines for those, but it's not needed and I've completed it without Headhunter. Another viable option that you could do is if your Ember Fusillade isn't doing that much damage, you could try something like Fireball. Fireball can definitely help clearing maps much easier, but they won't be as strong on the bosses and you'll still use Ember Fusillade. You'll notice all of the extra purple dots around my character, and those are volatility stacks. Now when they blow up, volatility does increase our damage drastically because it increases our chaos damage. However, the uptimes are not the best because we only really want it for bosses, and it really doesn't pop when we're about to kill a boss. That's not to say the volatility is absolutely useless. I just don't want to over exaggerate and say that it's so good it's giving us 200% extra damage, blah blah blah. It's good for mapping, it's just not the best overall, and it definitely needs a rework, but we definitely can't use anything else for this build, so this is the only ascendancy notable worth grabbing. For bossing, the first thing I do is cast a couple Frost Bombs to get the cold remnants when they explode. Afterwards, I cast Firestorm right before the boss is able to be damaged. Next, I cast Unleash along with my Ember Fusillades to make sure that they're ready to be cast off as soon as the boss is damageable. I then apply the Despair Curse to increase the damage taken of the boss. From here, cast Unleash and Ember Fusillade until the boss is dead. Now I'll show some other uber boss kills such as Uber Arbiter as well as King of the Mist.
is written. The mother soul.
If you made it this far, I really appreciate it. Please hit the like button and subscribe if you aren't already. It really helps me. I hope you enjoy the build and that you learned something. But as always, I'll catch you in the next one. Take it easy, Exiles.